Right, let's dive into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the massive, high-stakes, global master plan to finally eliminate tuberculosis. Now, you might be tempted to think of TB as a disease of the past, something you'd read about in a Victorian novel, but the reality is starkly different. We're going to look at a comprehensive review from the world's top health researchers detailing the 5-year progress on a global roadmap designed to wipe this disease out for good. We're going to break down the science, the testing, the incredible logistics, and of course, the money required to pull off this monumental goal.
So 10.7 million, that's a staggering number, right? Well, that represents the total amount of TB cases globally in the year 2024 alone. And alongside that, 1.23 million deaths. Those aren't historical figures. Those are today's realities. Tuberculosis remains one of humanity's leading global health crises. And unfortunately, since this roadmap was originally published a few years ago, the social, health, and economic burdens of this disease haven't substantially diminished. Actually, the burden even increased recently, largely due to disruptions from the COVID-19 pandemic. So here's the bottom line. To truly eliminate this crisis, we absolutely need a brand new plan of attack. Yes, we have treatments, but they're long, they're arduous, and frankly, this bacteria is notoriously stubborn. The overarching consensus among global health experts and the World Health Organization is that vaccines are the single most cost-effective tool to decrease this burden. We literally need a highly effective, affordable vaccine if we are ever going to reach that ambitious goal of global elimination. Think of this roadmap as a massive global relay race. We'll be covering 1. The global TB crisis. 2. Diversifying the pipeline. 3. Accelerating clinical trials. 4. Ensuring public health impact. And 5. The final hurdle, funding. Okay, part 1, the global TB crisis, a century-old foe. Let's establish our main problem here. The century-old BCG vaccine is great at protecting babies, but it completely misses the adults and adolescents who are actually driving the modern pandemic. BCG has been doing a fantastic job for over 100 years preventing disseminated disease in early childhood, which is great. But tuberculosis spreads primarily through lung disease in older individuals. So, to stop transmission in its tracks and eliminate TB, we need a vaccine specifically engineered to protect adults and adolescents from pulmonary tuberculosis. That is the ultimate goal here. The WHO's comprehensive roadmap divides the entire strategy into 3 main themes: diversifying the pipeline, accelerating preclinical and clinical development, and ensuring public health impact. It's an absolutely massive, coordinated effort. We're talking about linking basic science, animal models, huge clinical trials, and deep epidemiological modeling all together. It's the only way to ensure that the moment a vaccine is ready, the rest of the world is actually ready to use it. Moving on to part 2, diversifying the pipeline. New tech, old mysteries. This is a big one. Researchers are essentially flying blind with what's called a correlate of protection. Think of this as a cheat sheet for the immune system. With COVID-19, we knew exactly what antibody levels meant you were protected, but with TB, the immune response is just much more mysterious. We know T cells are involved, we're seeing immune subsets like Th17 emerge as important, but we still don't have that definitive, measurable signature in humans. And without it, scientists can't just quickly test if a vaccine works in early stages. Instead, they have to wait for massive, costly, years-long phase 3 trials to see if people actually get sick. Which brings us to part 3, accelerating clinical trials, the testing ground. Before these vaccines ever reach humans, researchers use an incredible array of animal models to try and predict human efficacy. We're talking about everything from resistant and susceptible mice to guinea pigs that develop human-like lesions, all the way up to non-human primates that present disease closest to ours. Scientists are even developing ultra-low-dose models where animals are infected with just 1 to 3 bacteria to perfectly mimic natural exposure. But here's the catch. Despite all these advanced functional readouts, we still do not have a single animal model that perfectly translates to human success. Now, when you contrast the massive global TB burden with the active pipeline of vaccines in human trials, it's shockingly small. Right now, there are very few candidates successfully moving beyond the discovery stage. There are a couple of really exciting new mRNA vaccines from BioNTech in phase 2A, leveraging that exact same tech that fought COVID. And over in phase 3, we do have candidates like M72/AS01E undergoing a huge multi-country trial. But overall, the pipeline is undeniably thin. If one of these late-stage candidates fails, we simply don't have a large bench of backups ready to sub in. Because those standard prevention of disease trials are so painfully massive and expensive,
researchers recently tried getting clever with alternative endpoints to save time and money. For example, they tried vaccinating people right at the end of their standard TB drug treatment to prevent recurrence. They also tried looking for the prevention of infection by measuring blood test conversions in adolescents. But unfortunately, candidates like H56 and DAR901 failed to show clear efficacy in these alternative designs. It just proves how incredibly stubborn this bacteria really is. There are no real shortcuts here. The hard, expensive road of proving a vaccine prevents the actual disease seems to be the only guaranteed path forward.
All right, part 4, ensuring public health impact, the rollouts. Let's say we get an approved shot. Boom. Done, right? Well, no. Even with a working vaccine, countries have to navigate an obstacle course of complex logistics. First off, they need national modeling data to know the exact health and economic impacts of the rollout. Second, the vaccine itself has to be incredibly practical. If it requires ultra-cold storage, or if people have to undergo costly testing for prior TB infection before they can even get it, that's a logistical nightmare in high-burden countries. What we really need is a single-dose, thermostable shot. And finally, we have to tackle potential adult vaccine hesitancy. Early studies make it crystal clear. We need deep community partnerships right now to build trust long before the vaccine ever arrives.
And that drops us at part 5, the final hurdle, funding. Dropping the baton at any stage ruins the entire race, right? But who actually pays for all of this? Because TB primarily affects low and middle-income countries, the massive investment required for these late-stage trials is seen as incredibly risky by the private sector. Pharmaceutical companies generally just don't see a massive profit margin here compared to diseases prevalent in high-income nations. And so, the heavy burden of funding the research, those large-scale phase 3 trials, and the ultimate procurement falls almost entirely on global health organizations, charities, and official development assistance from wealthy nations. So here's the really crucial point. Right when we desperately need to hit the gas, severe official development assistance cuts in 2025 threaten to derail the entire pipeline. Recent U.S. funding cuts, for instance, have directly impacted global TB aid. Meanwhile, the UN set a target requiring $22 billion annually by 2027 just to fight TB, but historically we are falling severely short of those commitments. And without that sustained funding, those late-stage phase 3 trials, the exact ones we just established are absolutely necessary, simply cannot happen. Thankfully, international working groups are already scrambling to propose unprecedented, market-shaping solutions. The WHO's Vaccine Accelerator Finance and Access Working Group, along with organizations like Gavi, are working right now to map out global demand and set up sustainable financing mechanisms before efficacy results are even published. The entire goal here is to de-risk the investment up front so that researchers and manufacturers feel confident pushing these vital vaccines all the way across the finish line. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to consider. We have the roadmap, we have the scientific tools, and we have a pipeline of candidates that could finally stop the spread of a disease claiming over 1 million lives every single year. The science is incredibly difficult, for sure, but the greatest barrier we face right now might just be our own collective will and our geopolitical choices to actually fund the solution. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.